From the banks of Dewey Lake, it's the Dewey Pod Monster.
All right, welcome back. My name is John, and this is the Dewey Pod Monster Podcast. This is your weekly podcast about consumption. And with me this week is the host of the Dewey Pod Monster Podcast. His name is Sean, and he is also the authority on Michigan craft beer. Sean, how are you doing today?
I'm good. You like my jacket?
You're not wearing a jacket. Your jacket has been verboten by all other jackets. Something.
I'm the only one allowed to wear a jacket.
You must be French.
I think so. I think I am.
Are you?
Yeah, like part.
Sacre bleu.
Champs-Élysées.
Let's see. Wait, no.
Ironically, speaking of French people,
Oh.
I watched a...
Here we go.
I watched a documentary. Two of them. Two. Can you believe it?
Yes.
I watched a documentary. It's on Disney Plus. It's called Fire of Love. I don't know if you've seen the thing about it. The things.
That kind of like Rock of Love, but more Bret Michaels.
No, it's like Rock of Love, but less Bret Michaels and more volcanoes.
I'm not sure that's a fair trade.
I think volcanoes are a lot cooler than Bret Michaels.
I mean, maybe I've never seen a volcano. I've seen Bret Michaels, and that hairpiece is pretty impressive. I think a volcano would probably just weld it on even more.
You know, I don't think I've ever seen him without some kind of skull cap or bandana or hat. I don't think I've seen the actual top of his head for a long time.
So, side note before we go into what we've been watching, I went and saw him at like a local dive bar around here just because it was like $5 and I kind of wanted to see the like losers that went to see Bret Michaels. And I guess I'm one of those losers.
Yeah.
You can, like, when you see him live, you can very much tell whenever he adjusts the hat or the head scarf or whatever he's got on that day.
Mm-hmm.
The whole like headpiece moves with it. So I think it's all stitched together in one piece, and he just interchanges it like it's all one big hat.
Watch out for that mic arm.
I know. I got to get used to that now. That's all I got. So
anyways, so it's about these these married volcanologists. I think that's what people who study they study volcanoes.
It's a pretty cool title.
Yeah, they're the Crafts, and they're French. They were killed in a volcanic explosion, but
no way.
Yeah, our benefit is, I forget which one. It wasn't Mount St. Helen. I don't think. Maybe it was. No, I don't remember. Shows you how much I paid attention. But it has a lot of really cool. They archived everything. They filmed everything. The husband was like a videographer of sorts, and so they have all this footage of their early, studies and stuff. And the wife wrote the books, and that's how they kind of funded their research, because they weren't, I think they worked for a university, but it wasn't like government funded or anything. They self-funded it. So it's got all these really cool shots of people basically standing like inches from magma and shit, like rivers of lava and all this really cool explosions and shit. It was just pretty cool, kind of educational about volcanoes and such. Gray volcanoes and white volcanoes, I think, the smoke or something. Like the white ones aren't the deadly ones, the gray ones are.
Why do they got to be colors?
Because that's what color stuff burns.
Wow.
It's what burns. Other than that, I watched the Michael J. Fox documentary, I guess. Have you heard of this? Have you heard of this Michael J. Fox documentary? It's called Still, and it kind of covers his early life, his career, when he learned about his Parkinson's.
Is this talking about his drug use before Parkinson's? Because I read something about him recently saying he thinks a lot of his Parkinson's was brought on by the drug use he did before having Parkinson's. Yeah,
that was all based on the promo, like the promo tour of this, PR tour of this documentary. But it's interesting. They have they do really these slick like edits where they'll include whatever age he's talking about, whatever year. They'll include like clips from his movies that kind of show him acting out, what he's talking about. But there's at the very beginning, he talks about these fights that he would get into with Woody Harrelson. Like they'd go out drinking and get into a fight against each other, and they clipped it together where they look like they're actually fighting each other, or at least stand-ins and whatnot. They interviewed, it's kind of like raw, unfiltered, right? Like
Oh, I thought you meant raw like WWE.
No, but it's pretty eye-opening, I don't know anybody with Parkinson's, and Michael J. Fox, like he kind of, once he really kind of came out and his symptoms started getting a lot worse, you know, he just kind of retreated. Obviously, he does more of his fundraising and stuff. And you see, like, he's 61 now. And I think he was diagnosed at, I think he said at 29. I think that's when he found out that he was starting to get, you know, the early symptoms of Parkinson's. And I don't know if you saw, I watched a CBS Sunday morning interview with him. And he's like, I can sit still, but I can't talk. Like I have to fully concentrate on sitting still. And his speech is real kind of messed up now over time. And he's had several broken bones from falls. Like, I guess falling is like a big thing with Parkinson's patients. He had like a benign tumor on his spine. So they did surgery for that.
Ugh.
And that's kind of messed up his walking even more. So it's really kind of jarring to see him, how he is now, how the disease has like progressed. But it's, I don't know, it's like, I mean, it's inspirational because the guy's just, he's totally optimistic about it. He's realistic about it, but he's optimistic about it. It's like really inspiring to watch that he can continue to carry on regardless of this disease basically like ravaging his body, his nervous system and everything. It was really really kind of touching documentary. I kind of expected that when I saw the interviews and saw the press tours and heard all the stuff, and I saw a clip of it and I was like, I really want to watch that. So that's what I watched.
Last thing I really watched with him in it was the season of Curb that he was on.
Yeah. He gives him the Coke and it's all shaken up.
Yeah.
They show that scene in there, yeah.
Yeah, he was on, well, he had like a whole season that he was on, basically. Like, he was a recurring character for a full year, but he was really on. He really made every episode that he was in, and he played off Larry like perfectly.
And I think that's just how he is.
Yeah. I don't know if I'm sure he has done something, because that was probably like 5 seasons ago at this point. And that show just kind of comes and goes when it wants, it seems like.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sure he's done something since then, but I don't know what it is.
So the last thing he did, well, he was in a Lil Nas X video where he kind of reprises his Marty McFly Back to the Future 2 role. And then he was in he was a voice in Back Home Again. That's the other thing about that documentary, is that it's a lot of him reading parts of his book. And you can tell that some of it's like AI. It's generated from his voice before, because
I didn't know he had a book.
Yeah, I think it came out a couple of years ago. But it was, like I said, it's really nicely put together, really nicely edited and kind of slick how they use all the different clips and everything. And it made me look at all his movies, and I'm like, man, I should really watch Back to the Future. I should really watch Secret of My Success. I should really watch, all these different movies that he's been in over the years, and kind of made me want to go back and actually go back and watch some of his old movies.
If only we had a platform to make up a reason to watch an old movie.
Yeah, I don't know if those movies fit the theme of this show, but maybe we could revisit something.
I mean, the theme is consumption.
That's true. I mean, it would be a nice palate cleanser again from some of these fine movies that we've watched the last few weeks.
I don't know what you're talking about. We've watched some of the most like chef's kiss movies in the world over the last month.
Sure.
One of them was pretty good.
Yeah.
So,
consensus on that.
Anything else you got that you've been watching this week?
No, I've been playing a lot of Tears of the Kingdom, Zelda, Legend of Zelda, Tears of the Kingdom, but that doesn't really, know what that is. By the time this episode comes out, people have already probably forgotten it.
Is that how quick games are going now? I don't even know.
Well, the cycle with all this stuff goes so quickly.
I still hear people talking about Call of Duty like it just came out.
Yeah, but Call of Duty's, well, I think, maybe people will be still talking about Zelda in, 3 weeks when this will come out?
2 weeks, something like that.
2, 3, whatever.
So I'm going to bring us back to Wrestling Corner, because we haven't been there in like 2 weeks.
Nice.
My only documentary this week was a documentary called 350 Days, which is on Amazon. It is probably at least 10 years old at this point. There's a couple wrestlers in it that are dead. One of them that just died literally last week. And it takes you through the life of a wrestler that spends 350 days a year on the road. And you really get to see how these guys abuse their body and how they are away from their family. There's a lot of Bret Hart crying, which he tends to do. It's not the best of the wrestling documentaries that I've seen, but when you are a nerd who likes to watch documentaries about wrestling, sometimes you got to bite the bullet and just go with whatever's on, right?
Yeah, I've done that.
I'm sure I'll do it again. It happens. So kept up with my Beavis and Butthead running weekly theme. Beavis got rabies this week, and that was pretty entertaining. I don't remember what the other episode was, but Beavis getting rabies was definitely the highlight of probably this season so far. I teased that I had some Muppets. There's a new show on Disney Plus called Muppet Mayhem, which is following the band in the Muppets, which is the Electric Mayhem.
Yes.
And it's like 10 episodes. They're pretty short, and I don't know, it's I have a hard time hating on Muppets because they're goofy puppets. Like, it's hard to dislike them, you know? At least I find it hard to dislike them. You gonna tell me that you hate Muppets?
No. It's just puppets.
Yeah, well,
they're Muppets. Thank you very much.
On the plus side, this show has Danny Trejo, and it has Cheech and Chong, and it has a Muppet acid trip at Joshua Tree, which is induced by eating 30-year-old marshmallows, which I was pretty amused by.
Those will do it.
Yeah. The show started to win me over, and then it pissed me right off because Kevin Smith showed up for a whole episode. I'm like, why of all the people that you had to have on this show does Kevin Smith need to be here being Kevin Smith?
The Smithiest.
Yeah. I don't even know how to like really break it down more than that. But if you like Muppets and you don't mind the show basically being a vehicle for Muppets to cover contemporary rock songs, you'll probably like this. Or if you just like watching Muppets be goofy,
Muppety.
It's very animal heavy. So if you like that character, this is a good show for you. Definitely don't think it's one that deserves a whole episode, though.
I think Animal might be my least favorite Muppet.
Really?
Yeah. Well,
a reason why?
He's, I don't know, just really like one-dimensional, you know?
Okay, that's fair. I don't really like Miss Piggy.
Yeah, I think for me, she kind of comes and goes. Like, sometimes she's tolerable, and other times I'm not a big fan.
She just seems like a bitch.
Yeah.
I don't really care for her, but most of the Muppets I like. There's not a whole lot of them that I dislike. We've talked about Kermit before. He's good. He knows how to ride a bike. What else do you need?
Yeah.
Getting away from Muppets, I kind of went back to the rabbit hole and watched Motel Hell. I'm sure you're familiar with that
did you?
movie.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, it's just a fun movie with some cannibalism and a chainsaw fight. What else do you need?
That was a movie that I think I rented, and I don't know. I don't even know if I finished it. Last time I tried to watch it, which was like 25 years ago. Like, I rented it on VHS, you know? So it's been a long, long time since I've seen that.
It's not the fastest movie. It's definitely a slow burn. But when it goes, it fucking goes. Like probably the last like 20, 30 minutes or so of the movie is super entertaining. The problem is the first hour or so of it is, all right, this is kind of weird. Where is this? One of those movies, like, where is this going? And then the payoff, I would say right now, like 2023, it probably doesn't pay off as well as like what I would expect from a modern movie. But coming from, I think that was released in 1980, 81, something like that. It was real early in the 80s. Coming from that era, it was enough for the slow burn to justify it, I guess.
I know it came up very early in Search of Darkness.
Yes.
No, I remember renting, I think it was one of those times for me, like when I rented 5 or 6 movies at once, and I decided to watch it, and that was just one that I never got to. I think that's what ended up happening with that for me.
Damn late fees always got you, right?
Well, I think I did try to watch it, and like you said, it was just really slow for the time, and I just didn't pick back up. I was probably watching Shogun Assassin for the 100th time or something instead.
Sounds logical.
Yeah.
Well, that one, if you or anyone wants to give it a try, that is on Tubi right now for free. So Tubi is always the cesspool that keeps on giving, it seems.
One thing I forgot to mention, big epic announcement for me. And I'll be watching a lot more Tubi, I think, now.
Oh.
Today, we finally really cut the cord. Like, we have internet, but no TV anymore from our local cable provider. Big deal in this house.
No, I get it. I've been off it for well over a year now. So, no, it's almost feels
liberating in a way.
Yeah.
I told my wife, I said, now I can start doing Coke. I have an extra $100 a month.
At least.
Then she crashed that plane or I don't know, whatever. She's like, I think it's going to cost more than that. I was like, oh.
That's exactly what I was about to say. It might be $100 the first month, but that's about the only month that will only be $100.
Well, I get that free first taste, though.
That's why it might be $100 the first month and then every other month.
I clearly didn't think this out very well.
It's the sign of a cokehead. not thinking things out clearly. So just start with the crack. It's a lot easier.
It's probably cheaper.
Sure. Only other thing I really watched this week, I went back to a classic, which was the 1990s bowling movie with a Amish guy called Kingpin. It's one of those movies that's just kind of a comfort movie. It's so dumb, but so funny that I could put that on and watch it pretty much any time. But I don't remember where I found that, but it was nice to kind of have that one on again, just because I haven't seen it in quite a while, and it holds up really well, even though it's like any other 90s comedy. It's got some jokes in it that probably wouldn't get through today, especially in a PG-13 movie. But if you're not going to be all like overly sensitive, it works.
Kids these days, they don't know what's good.
I don't think they know what a joke is half the time. That's fine. So it's probably for the better. We're making a better planet. Maybe. Probably not. So we got a topic this week that is not about Muppets.
We do have a topic this week.
Yeah. We are doing another request. This request is from Ebony061. That it's actually spelled eBuddy061 on Twitter. And she is the host of the Film Spark Pod, which is film_spark_pod. And we will tag them somewhere so that we retweet their stuff a lot. She requested that we take a look at the film Deerskin, which is a French film. We don't speak French, but we did this anyway.
Voulez-vous coucher avec moi?
Yes.
Really? Okay.
I know that's a song with Pink, right?
Sure.
It's
got Pink.
Anyway, so Deerskin, this is a movie. We'll start, as we usually do lately, with our third-party review. This is a anonymous review that was found on Rotten Tomatoes, but I thought it was kind of funny. From September 28th of 2021, this movie is absolutely too absurd for words. F-U-R words. A man is obsessed with a friggin' jacket that is 2 sizes too small. It's just stupid. Don't waste your time.
I don't know. I don't know if it's actually too small. It's short for sure. Like you needed a tall.
Some jackets are like that.
Yeah, and I think that's just the style of that specific jacket. Looking at IMDb, this one doesn't have it's not ranked out of the number, like Into Oblivion, whatever the number goes up to. It's not ranked, but I'll read you the plot. And I'm going to say this week that the plot is the one on the top. Really short. A man's obsession with his designer deerskin jacket causes him to blow his life savings and turn to crime.
I don't know if I totally agree with that, but okay.
Well, what don't you agree with on that? I thought it was pretty good.
I mean, it's sort of. Anyway, so this movie, I think most of our listeners probably won't be familiar with this just from the title. I certainly wasn't. I know you said you weren't. This movie is from the director Quentin Dupieux, if I pronounce that wrong. Oh, Dupieux. Maybe. This is the same guy that made the movie Rubber, which seems to be his most well-known title, which is a movie about a murderous tire. Pretty entertaining movie for what it is. And knowing that, and I didn't find that out till after the fact, it kind of makes a lot of the humor in this movie make a little bit more sense, because this movie, I would certainly say, is quirky, to say the least. It's a relatively short flick, which moves it's kind of, for me, it was paced weird, but I think we'll get into that a little bit more. Why don't you tell me just kind of off the top here, without going too into detail either way, like, how do you feel about French films and this French film in particular? Or foreign films in general, I guess. This is only the second foreign movie we've done.
Yeah, I think this is the first movie that we've done that has been exclusively subtitled. Is that correct?
We did Rare Exports. No, that had a couple.
Yeah. Well, that had no. I mean, I'll consider that.
That had.
Yeah, that was subtitled for the most part. There was some English.
I think there was like one, maybe two characters that spoke English, but
yeah,
mostly.
I forgot that, and I think most of our listeners did too. Yeah, looking at the numbers, but no,
our Christmas marathon might be a little bit different next year.
That didn't go over very well. But anyways, yeah, I've only seen a few French films. The only other one I can think of off the top of my head is a movie called Fat Girl, and it kind of has some similar elements. I'm gonna say mostly the way both of these films, this film and that film end, are very similar, not in the respect of exactly what happens, but the way that they end. Not spoiling anything. Yes, not spoiling anything. This movie ends very abruptly and shockingly in a way, but I think funnily at the same time. Fat Girl ends very shockingly, and it is very brutal the way that it ends, and the movie doesn't. And again, we're talking about a totally separate movie. This movie, but going off those two things, I would have to say, like, do all French films end very, very abruptly? I mean, this isn't necessarily shocking because I don't feel like anything in this movie really plays too seriously. It's like very, I don't know, we talked about this kind of off mic a little bit, and I think you said something to the effect of you only found like a few moments of the movie that were like, I don't know, funny to you. Am I putting words in your mouth, or is that true?
No, you're not.
And I found the movie to be pretty humorous throughout. Like, I felt like it just kind of had this bit of whimsy to it, or had this like element to it that it just didn't play itself very seriously. Like, it was just kind of playing with everything. I mean, from the very opening of the movie, the guy is trying to basically shed his life, right? And he's like, he just looks at himself in this green corduroy jacket and he's tired of it. He pulls in the gas station and tries to flush it down the toilet. Like, that's just absurd. But I thought that was kind of funny.
Yeah, well, when I say I only found a couple parts funny, I meant like actually
Like
out loud laughing. Funny.
I chuckled at quite a bit.
I found things like the toilet flushing that you're referring to. I was like, all right. I thought most of it, and I know I already said this word, I found it to be more quirky than funny. Like, it's odd behavior for an adult. Okay, he's acting a little. I don't know. I found that to be more of like what I took from it as far as the humor is concerned. But this is billed as a comedy movie, a horror comedy. I think that's a weird sets. I think calling this a horror comedy almost sets like a weird
expectation. Yeah.
Which, to be perfectly frank, like, I'm not saying this is as far as how I feel about my overall opinion of the movie, but I feel like if you go into this trying to sell it as a horror comedy, for me, that expectation's not met on either front.
Yeah, I think you have a pretty big shoes to fill.
Yeah.
So this movie, can we just kind of explain more about the plot? Okay, so the main character, played by, I'm going to say, we're going to totally butcher like every French thing in this movie, but Jean Dujardin, I believe is his name. He plays
Dujardin. Yosh.
What? Well, oui. So he plays
George.
I'm going to call him George. I know his name is like George. I don't know. George. We're going to say he's George. George is, you kind of find out he's driving a really long distance. They don't really kind of tell you how long it is, but he's driving this long distance to buy a deerskin jacket from this old man. And he spends like 7,300 euros, which is like $7,300 for this jacket. And the guy who sells it to him basically said, yeah, I only wore it for a little bit, and it just was in style when I bought it. He's an really old guy, and he's like, I'll throw in this video camera, on top. I don't use it. It's just sitting here. Just take that with you. So George leaves, and he finds this kind of remote little hotel to stay in, and he doesn't have any money. And you don't really understand why, but he gives his wedding ring as collateral to pay for this hotel room because he doesn't have any cash. Then he's talking to his wife on the phone, and she says, I don't want to talk to you again.
Fuck off, Georgie.
Yeah, you don't exist to me anymore. And he throws his phone away, and he goes into this local bar where he meets Denise, played by Adèle Haenel. I'm guessing that's how you say her name.
I believe the French pronunciation is D-Nice.
Oh, God. All right. Well, I'm not going to do any French pronunciation of these people's real name. Well, their character names. So George and Denise, those are two anglicized characters. And she's the bartender at this place. There's never anybody here. There's another woman there, and they're kind of talking. And George starts to display these, I don't know, like narcissistic qualities of himself in this jacket. And once his wife kind of dumps him or tells him to fuck off, he starts to develop this voice for the jacket, and the jacket will talk to him, and he will talk to the jacket. So he has these conversations out loud between himself and the jacket, which he is also voicing. We find out that Denise is a kind of amateur film editor. She likes to edit movies to rearrange them. She rearranged Pulp Fiction, and it sucked, in her opinion. And George needs to make this money. So we're kind of going along these lines of, George trying to make this money, and in the meantime, the jacket tells George, I have this great grand dream. I want to be the only jacket that exists. And George says, that's really kind of funny because I want to be the only person to be able to wear a jacket on Earth. And that's where we kind of start.
That's pretty much the catalyst of the entire film.
Yeah, right? I was going to say we start to go off the rails, but I think when he starts talking for the jacket, we were already pretty close to off the rail territory.
Well, yeah, I think the movie really goes, well, at that point, the movie feels more like a weird dive into this weird personality disorder. And I don't know what you call that disorder, but it's this like look into this person's weird obsession with his jacket. So we might as well just say it now if you haven't already figured out. Spoilers for this. It's about a 5-year-old movie at this point, 4-year-old movie. So it's not the newest thing. We're going to spoiler warning from this point forward.
Yeah.
The way George starts trying to live out this jacket's dream of being the only jacket and him having the only jacket, he starts by trying to pay people off to just like rob them of their jacket. Like he'll take the camera and
he
film them.
The preface of him trying to cast for this movie, and he will, he'll put. I don't know if he put like an ad in the paper or something, but he has these people join him in these remote locations.
He just was like finding people randomly because he didn't have any money out. But
he does have money because he pays them. He pays them to act. But like the second guy, not the group of 3 that we see at the very beginning of the movie, they say, I pledge to never wear a jacket again. And they give up all their jackets, and it's so that George has proof on film, number one, of them saying it, but it's also like a device for him to be able to, like, I'm making this movie, and you're going to be in my thing. But the second guy he meets that has the moped or the dirt bike or whatever, the motorcycle, he's waiting there for him, and they meet together, so they must have communicated somehow.
Right. So eventually, and I don't remember if it's that George just runs out of money or he just feels like this is a better solution, save money. He essentially starts just straight up like killing people so that they're not wearing jackets and burying their jackets in like a big mass jacket grave in the middle of a field, essentially. Yeah. So that's a big chunk of like plot wise what you're going to see in this. Now, where it gets a little eccentric is some of the stuff like his methodology and that he decides to do, like
the weapon.
Yeah, you can't talk about this without bringing this up. One, I'm impressed that this like shitty motel that he's in still has a steel fan blade, or it's
aluminum,
so
or whatever. Yeah, metallic.
I don't think you can sharpen aluminum. I know you can sharpen steel, so not well. But what he essentially does is he rips the ceiling fan off the ceiling, removes a fan blade, which has this perfect handle already built in. Which, okay, odd design choice for a fan. Like there's no screws in it or anything like that. It's just this perfect handle, and he takes it and essentially drifts outside his car door with it, dragging the fan blade across the cement to sharpen it, and gets a perfect edge on the edge of this fan blade, and it essentially becomes like a mini machete that he's using to go whack people, which is pretty humorous. Now, for me, one thing that I actually enjoy doing is sharpening like my kitchen knives and stuff. It's kind of relaxing in like a weird way. It's very mechanical type thing. I can tell you there is no way in Christ that you would be able to drag any type of steel outside a car door window and get any kind of fucking usable edge for anything other than just like bludgeoning people. And he turns this into like it's like the Ginsu. It's Jason Voorhees machete, but sharper somehow. I don't know how the fuck he did it, but it's kind of funny.
I love the fact that he drives and just drags this thing on the ground, and that's how he sharpens it. I think that's hilarious.
He even gets a blade formation on it. He's got like a perfect like clip point blade on this thing from a car door. Like, fuck off. It is funny. It is very humorous to see, and it's one of those things, again, you kind of have to let go, because knowing the little bit that I know about like knives and how to sharpen them, I was like, this wouldn't fucking work. But it's in the script, so I guess this is what we're doing.
This is like, I don't know, it's like the sharpest knife or sword. It's like a sword, basically. The sharpest sword imaginable.
Like a machete.
Yeah, I mean, it's huge. It's like the berserker like sword. He puts there's a scene
it's like
where
a 15-inch fan blade or something like that, at least.
He puts it through the roof of a car and through a person's head with minimal effort. No effort at all.
I think it was a soft top car, but still.
Oh, I don't even know, but still, yeah, regardless, he puts it through somebody's head. I mean, that's even harder than the roof could be.
It's a very like slasher movie type kill when he does it. Like I don't even remember exactly what he's saying, but the girls in the car like be like, "Hey, are you going to film me? And what's this about a jacket or blah blah blah?"
Well, he doesn't even mention it. He just she asks him for directions.
Oh, is that what it was?
Yeah. He has the camera, but I don't think he's He may be filming it, but I think she's just like, hey, can you tell me where whatever is? And he's just like,
It's like a 20-second scene, if that, and most of it is just you're realizing he just put a fan blade through this girl's head, through a car.
There are several people get killed by George in this movie with the fan blade, but the thing that I like about the movie is that you don't see a lot of, it's not gory, but it's there. There's a guy that gets his face like chopped off, but they don't focus on it. You know, it's not something where you're really focusing on the effects. You can tell that money was spent on the effects. I mean, they're really well done. They just don't even linger on it. It's just kind of like it happens and then it's over and it's on to the next thing. I enjoy that part of it. It's not, it kind of lends to the absurdity to it.
It's an underrated way to do gore in a movie. I can't think of another film off the top of my head, but I know there's other films that do it where it's the whole less is more concept. Like, you know, it's there. It looks good. And I've never seen someone get their face cut off with a fan blade, so I don't know how much blood that would really produce. But for the sake of argument, I'm going to say that's probably more realistic than what you would see in, say, a Terrifier movie where it's just fucking flopping shit everywhere, you know?
Yeah, and they really, again, linger on it.
Yeah,
they're really proud of what they've done, and they need you to see it too.
Yeah, well, there's movies for both. Like, there's good on both sides of that coin. Like, one's not necessary or inherently better than the other. But for this kind of movie, I think if you did get that really over the top, like, splatter on it, it would almost throw you off of what the rest of this movie is.
Well, and they're different audiences.
Absolutely.
I don't think this movie was necessarily aimed. I mean, we didn't make the movie, we didn't write it, but I feel like it wasn't necessarily aimed at like a horror audience in particular.
I feel like this is aimed squarely at like the indie movie crowd. Like, this is the kind of movie that would show up on like Criterion
IFC,
Collection,
when they actually showed
that
movies?
type of thing. Yeah, it's something indie channel, like Criterion might be too high a praise for it. I don't know, but that type of, just independent filmmaking marathon, Sundance, that type of shit.
Maybe they showed on IFC in between episodes of Three's Company.
The Office.
Is that what they show now?
I don't know. I don't have cable. So.
Well, just to mention, that's true. If this is a movie that you want to watch, and we'll continue to talk about it, but I want to throw it out there. It is available for free, quote unquote, if you're a subscriber to AMC Plus. It's also available to rent on Apple TV, Amazon, and Kino, whatever the fuck that is. I feel like we've been kind of neglecting telling people where to watch this stuff, so I want to throw that out there.
My favorite part of this movie, my absolute favorite scene, the scene that made me laugh harder than anything else in this, the kid getting blasted in the face with a rock.
Yeah, with the brick. That was, and it pays off.
I thought it was just, either way, it does pay off, but him getting blasted in the face with that when he's basically being a little shit kid and staring him down while he's not, if I remember, he didn't kill anyone at this point yet in the movie. He's just being weird.
He's stealing a jacket, at this
right
specific scene.
And there's this kid who's maybe like 8-9 years old, and he tells him to fuck off, and he keeps sitting there staring at him. You think he's older than that, younger than that?
8 or 9?
I don't know. How old do you think he is?
He's probably like 13. You're not around kids very much. You're pretty bad at guessing kids' ages in these movies. There's like a 50-year-old, and you're like, there's 7-year-olds out here. That 7-year-old's still on the escalator.
Exactly. You need to stop making Kevin Smith references.
What are you talking about?
Exactly what I'm talking about.
I'm not. That's not what I was doing.
Anyway, he blasts the kid in the face with a rock, and it is, in my opinion, the funniest moment of the whole movie. Like, you don't know the payoff to it until the last minute of the movie. I guess I just ruined that. But I don't know. There's something about the way this rock hits this kid's face that is just really, really comical.
Well, and until that point,
saying it.
Up until that point, the kid kind of just shows up in the background to be an observer, to be like maybe the audience or the one, I don't know, entity in the movie that's like, what are you doing? Like he's just kind of watching them. And people in this small town randomly get killed, and nobody, like, there's never any kind of report like, oh, did you hear about those people that got murdered? Or it just kind of glossed over. And that's what I feel kind of, we have the first scene, right, where he's flushing the jacket down the toilet, and you just kind of realize, oh, okay, I mean, it never really goes down in the toilet, but this is going to be an absurd movie. Like, we don't have to play this so literally. Like, the character Denise, the bartender, she's this, like we mentioned before, she's this amateur editor, and he's telling her he has a camera. He says that he makes these movies, and she starts to fund him no questions asked. He's just like, yeah, my producers are in Siberia and they're filming this movie. They're doing other scenes, and I haven't been in touch with them because the cell reception's really bad. And later down the line, he lied. The lie he tells her is that they died, and he just found out. They faxed him to tell them that they died. And she's like, how did they fax you? They're dead. And he's like, oh, well, somebody faxed me. And she just starts to fund this thing, and she just becomes enamored with the movie that she knows he's not a filmmaker, but she becomes enamored with this movie that he's making or trying to make. And she's the one that kind of prompts him when he starts to, I think he gives her a tape with a couple people that he murders, and she's like critiquing his murdering on this video and like, hey, you should get a little closer.
Fake, she's talking about like the quote effects and whatnot with it. So she doesn't think it's an actual murder at that point.
Right. But I just like the dynamic between the two characters, and she starts to like indulge him by getting him. He becomes obsessed. I mean, the movie's called Deerskin, and I don't think we really touched on that much, but he starts to become obsessed with deerskin clothing. Like there's someone in one of the scenes, there's a person, somebody's laying in state, they're dead, and they're holding onto this deerskin hat.
Oh God.
Like a Davy Crockett hat.
This is the worst looking corpse that I've ever seen,
yeah,
like
it's pretty
in
bad.
Real life or in a movie. Like,
I was expecting when he pulls the hat away that the hands would be like frozen in the state that they were when they were holding the hat, but he gets the deerskin hat. She buys him deerskin pants. He gets deerskin boots. By the end of the movie, he's all decked out.
I was watching that corpse. I'm like, is this supposed to be a corpse, or is this like a dummy? Like, am I missing a joke here or something?
No, I think it's the guy. It's the receptionist.
Yeah, I know, but it looked that bad.
Yeah, I mean, again, there's so much weird.
Again, I didn't mention it, but
yeah.
I just watched Sleepaway Camp 2 this weekend. I watched corpses in that breathe and blink, and no one cared. But it's a different kind of movie. So, but yeah, anyway, Deerskin. He's obsessed with Deerskin. He's basically becoming Deerskin.
Yeah, I mean, he's decking himself out in full regalia, and I thought it was interesting that, and I guess deerskin has been used as an item of clothing for a long time. Native people wear it. I mean, but I was watching him, especially in the scene where he's like, he's digging that trench or that ditch to put the jackets in. And he doesn't have a shovel. He's just doing it by hand, and he's all in his deerskin stuff. I'm like, you're going to ruin it. It's going to get dirty. And then I'm thinking to myself, like, I'm an idiot. People have been wearing deerskin for like hundreds of years. I don't think they're, it's probably pretty durable.
It was a pretty snazzy looking ensemble by the end of it. I'll give them that.
Well, I like on the poster too, it says, on some of the posters, it says killer style, like above deerskin. Yeah. And that's like a thing that they bring up a lot, like, oh, pretty killer style, huh?
Do you have any negatives you want to touch on before we get into wrapping on this one?
I think it's hard for an American audience or an English-speaking audience to watch a movie like this. And I know that you kind of mentioned it, like, I had to read all this stuff. I don't have a problem with reading subtitles, but I think that...
In fairness, I generally don't either. But I do think when you're trying to push comedy on it, subtitled comedy doesn't always translate well.
Well, especially if there are, like, sight gags and things that are going on, because, you're kind of preoccupied with reading the subtitles.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I would have liked this as a dub movie, though. I don't think I would have wanted to sit through it.
Yeah, I'm not saying that.
And I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but that would be like my one complaint is that, but it's also not really a negative because it's kind of dialogue at parts of this movie can be very sparse. So you're able to focus on what's actually going on in the movie without, having to read the subtitle. And sometimes when you're reading the subtitle, you don't get, like I said, you don't catch those nuances that are happening on screen, but the dialogue's actually pretty sparse. It's not like an overly wordy, explainer kind of film. So I think the pacing at times is a little slow, but it is a really short movie. I think it's an hour and 15 minutes or something like that. I think
I wanted to talk about the pacing because it's an hour and 17 minutes and it's a weird hour and 17 minutes. So we generally praise movies with this kind of runtime for good reason. What's weird about this movie is this movie probably doesn't really start picking up and like getting to the really, like, most of the interesting things we've talked about is in the last like half hour of this movie or so. And the first aside from the toilet flushing, the first 45 minutes of this movie, I don't want to call it slow because it's not a long time to really get into a movie. 45 minutes of a start of a movie. I mean, it's not nothing, you should go pretty quick. I thought the pacing before he really starts losing his shit kind of really dragged. And it kind of made me start looking at my watch and thinking, why is this like, it was weird. I was like, this is not a long movie. I shouldn't even look at my watch at all. But I did find myself before the fan blade came down thinking, this is really taking a long time to get in. Then maybe that's a foreign film thing. Like maybe it's because I'm not normally watching this type of film, but it was noticeable to me. And like just kind of watching a couple other things like leading up, like people talking about this other than us. It was a recurring statement that the pacing felt really off in this for about 2/3 of the movie.
I didn't feel like it was, I felt it was a little slow, but I didn't think it was distractingly slow. I actually enjoyed all the kind of character building that you get. There's a lot of kind of story that goes in there. I thought there's a scene when he first goes in the bar and that woman's sitting there and Denise and the woman are talking and she approaches him afterwards. She's driving by. She's like, oh, do you need a ride? And he's like, no. And then she kind of like, oh, are you making a porno? Because I was in a couple porns like back in the day. And he's like, he thought she was trying to pick him up because of the deerskin jacket. And he finds out she's a prostitute. And I thought that was like hilarious at the at the time. Like, that's really funny to kind of add that in there. But I just thought it was kind of character building. It was a little, it could have been a little faster, but I feel like it was properly paced, but it did drag a little bit. That would be my kind of nitpicky complaint about the pacing.
I don't know that it was slow per se. I mean, that's probably the way that I'm explaining it, but it felt like I needed more to happen in that earlier part of the movie just to kind of pull a little more interest in before he totally went apeshit.
It almost feels like two movies in a way.
Yeah.
Like you get this kind of subtle, dark, black comedy kind of thing going on. And then when the killing starts, the comedy's ramped up a little bit more and it obviously gets darker. But
sure.
Yeah, it almost feels like it's two ideas that were kind of stitched together to make one movie, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So do you got anything you want to add before we start going into hot dogs?
No, I think we can just dive right in.
Okay. Who went first last week? I don't know who's starting here.
I'll start.
Okay, go for it.
I like that the whole movie is wrapped in dry, dark humor. That's something that I feel like we haven't really watched too many movies that are really dark humor. Like this has a bit of whimsy, but it's also dark and dry at the same time. That's kind of like my sense of humor. I don't want to say isn't anything, but there's not a lot that's really played for laughs. There aren't really any scenes that are, waiting for you to kind of laugh out loud. But at the same time, the whole idea is ridiculous. I just couldn't take much of it seriously, and that's not a bad thing. That's not an insult. It's not the sort of film that you're just kind of laughing out loud on a regular basis. But I did find myself kind of chuckling to myself fairly often. How does he go around to commit all these crimes and nobody ever gets caught? How did he perpetrate a crime in a hotel he's staying in and get away with it? And why doesn't Denise question what he's doing more? And why does she think the footage that he shot is really worthy of editing into anything? Nothing is really answered. None of those questions are answered. He just kind of goes on his killing spree. And regardless of all that, I did enjoy it. I would say I'd give Deerskin, I'll say 6.5 spit lubed fingers out of 11 hot dogs.
For me, I found this movie to be this feels like by far the most indie movie that we've watched in the time that we've been doing this show. It's got that independent filmmaker like quirkiness, odd timing, weird camera shots, a bizarre idea, all kind of wrapped into a small package that works surprisingly well. Actually gets, the further away I get from this movie, the more I kind of like what I watched. When I left it at first, like immediately I was like, fucking French people. And that was my initial response. But the more I think about it, the more I was like, that's kind of a weird, quirky little, tale that I just got told. And I like that. It does have enough story to kind of draw you in and keep you interested. Although I found myself having issues with the pacing in the first 2/3 of the movie, the payoff more than makes up for it. And when you're only cashing in at like an hour and a quarter, I can deal with a slow start for a quick burnout, I guess. Knowing that this is available to watch, I definitely would say that if you like weird indie films, this is worth checking out. I'd probably give it around 6 machete fan blades out of 10 hot dogs. It's not something I necessarily will see myself going back to and watching again, unlike Cocaine Bear apparently. just because it's one of those, like, now that I know what the story is and now that I know where it's going and everything, I don't really feel like I would gain a whole lot from watching it a second or third time. But it's interesting enough to kind of make up for that and be an enjoyable first watch that you don't have to invest a ton.
What did you think you would think about it when you went in watching it? Does that make sense? What was your initial like expectation when you were like, oh, Deerskin, okay, this is French. What did you think that you would rate it, I guess?
Like, what did I think I would give it as far as like on the hot dog scale?
Yeah.
Considering who sent it to us, I actually expected to like it a little bit more because she normally likes a lot of really over the top shit that we like. Think like The Stuff and, you know, those types of films. So I expected something a little bit more wacky, crazy, whatever, schlocky even. When I saw the poster for this and just kind of got a little, like, read the little plot, like you had mentioned.
Yeah.
This is a lot closer to what I expected, is kind of like an indie pseudo horror film. You?
I think that I talked to you after you had seen it the first time, after you had seen it, and I didn't really have much expectation going into it. And I think hearing what you kind of had to say at first, I was like, oh, I don't know if I'm going to like this. So it was really kind of a pleasant surprise when I watched it. I'm like, oh, this is kind of funny. Like, I am actually laughing at some of the stuff that's going on here. And it just kind of fed it. You know, I kind of lost that expectation as the movie progressed. Like I said, I've mentioned it a couple times since we've been talking about it. The jacket scene and the trying to flush it down the toilet, I was just like, that's hilarious. I don't know why that's so funny to me, but I just felt like, okay, this movie is going to be going some places. What the hell's going on here? What's this jacket all about? And it's not a great looking jacket. Like, I would never in a million years wear that jacket. It just looked too short.
I would wear it. I have a little more style than you do.
Killer style, apparently.
That's me. So, all right. Question of the week. So last week's question of the week, we had a question that was...
We did have a question.
We did. The question last week was, what is your favorite remake or reboot of a known or popular series? Doesn't necessarily have to be horror, but everyone gave us 4 answers because that's kind of what happens around here. Our friends at the You Run podcast, they responded back with a handful of titles. They mentioned Evil Dead 2013, Friday the 13th, 2009, The Thing, obviously, and more out there. 2019 Child's Play.
John's favorite.
Like it more than the original.
I'll have to watch it.
Our friend Jordana, who will be doing a guest appearance with us in the very near future, talking about a sequel. You can probably figure out which one, but that's a problem for next week. Yes, I think.
Sure.
Anyway, Evil Dead for sure. Short to the point. Let's see. First time responding to us, the Krusty Boys, that is their handle. They run a podcast called the Krusty Boys Podcast. Said they thought The Crazies was a dope remake, referring to the 2010 remake of the George Romero classic. I actually haven't seen that remake. I've seen the original, but have you seen that one?
I have, yeah. I think that's my answer too. That's a very underrated. It's kind of in that whole zombie vein, you know. The Crazies are. I've seen the Romero one.
Yeah,
and I don't know, this one, just because the Romero one's so kind of low budget, you know, it has that low budget kind of charm to it. And this one has a higher budget. I think Timothy Oliphant is in it. He's really good in it. He's a good kind of snarky character for that kind of movie. And that would be my answer too. I think The Crazies is a really, really good. I haven't seen it in a long time. So don't take it for gospel, but I haven't seen it in a long time. But it was, when I saw it, I remember it being like blowing my expectations out of the water. I thought it was really good.
So Ebony, who told us to watch this movie, Deerskin, from Film Spark Pod, she responded and said, Deerskin, haha, always maniac. It was well done, and Elijah Wood plays a creep a little too well. I don't like Elijah Wood. He is a real life creep, I'm assuming. He'll probably hear this and kill me.
Yeah, so. For sure. You're dead.
So our friends at Better End Draft, which is a podcast around here that talks about beer, but they are not the authority on Michigan craft beer. We've already had this discussion. I'm not sure who actually wrote this over there. They have a few people behind the scenes working there, but they said, I don't know about the others, but the Carrie remake is a favorite of mine. However, hot take incoming, while it is a loose remake itself, I would be down for a 2023 version of House of Wax. Continues. Or honestly, a true reboot of Tremors, not part of the current 7-8 movie canon. They were going to do a TV series with Kevin Bacon recently, and that got canceled. Brownie face.
Isn't House of Wax a remake as it is?
So there's the Vincent Price one, which I think that's the first. If there's one before Vincent Price,
I
don't know.
was thinking the Vincent Price one.
Yeah. So then they remade it with around 2000 something with Paris Hilton.
Right.
And I think he's saying that we would like to see it done again. I'd be out for it.
Bring back 13 Ghosts.
I don't think you're going to top the Vincent Price one because Vincent Price is untoppable. Well, I don't know. The Fly remake was better than the original, which, anyway, I would be all for a remake of Tremors. I don't think you could capture the fun side of Tremors. Like,
yeah, the schlockiness.
Yeah, that very 90s, like, goofy. And Tremors is one of those, we mentioned cable, like, that was on USA, like, every fucking night. And I watched it.
Yeah, like Sci-Fi Channel.
Yeah, I watched it a lot just because of that. It was on and it was dumb and I don't know, I was always entertained by it. But I would absolutely, if they were remaking Tremors, I'd go see it. So then we had a Facebook response from Jason Wells in Bourbon, which is not his real name, but we're going to go with that anyway. That's what it says on there. He says, I haven't seen enough of these to give a good answer. I can definitely say it's not The Omen, though. The reboot paled by comparison to the original in everything other than special effects. So just complaining about remakes, apparently. You didn't give an answer last week. Do you have an answer for this?
I'm going to go with the Crazies. I think that was probably the best answer that we got. I'm judging, and that's the best answer. Hands down.
I can't speak to that one as far as it being the best because I haven't seen that one, but
I think it's better than the original. I'll go out on a limb, hot take, and say I think the Crazies remake is better than the original.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised by that. I mean, I like the original because I'm a Romero fan, but that one is far from Romero's best work, and I could certainly see someone taking that idea and making it better. I will go as far to say the one that I'm going to pick, I like the remake better than the original movie, not the whole franchise, but the original movie. I would say the 2009 Friday the 13th was probably my favorite remake. No surprise to anyone, but I think that movie did a really good job of taking, it's kind of a remake. It's kind of a sequel. It's kind of like walking that line in between all those things, but it just touches on the Pamela stuff, which let's be real. Like we've said this in, I think, multiple episodes, like, you're not going to a Friday the 13th movie to see Pamela. You're going to see Jason. Like, it's just kind of what it is.
Yeah.
It's got a great opening scene in it. It kind of takes you back to all the things that you want to see in a Friday the 13th movie. It's brutal as hell. It modernizes it all in a way that makes sense. The only thing I didn't like in that movie is they introduced this whole, like, underground tunnel system to explain how Jason gets from point A to point B magically. And I didn't really fucking do that. I know that these characters who are not Jason are all there just to be dead, aside from one girl, more than likely.
Right.
In that movie, 2 people. But I don't care about the explanation. That's not why I'm going to see the movie. But the movie itself, I thought played surprisingly well. As far as one that I would want to see, we've brought this up before, whether it's on this show or on when we were on Featured Creature, but it's a damn shame that they haven't made a reboot or an updated version of Nightmare on Elm Street yet that actually does justice to that franchise. I don't think it would ever be better than the original, but the concept, like, it just seems like such a damn shame that you can't take this dream world concept and just go nuts with effects and make something like you essentially make an entirely CG movie. But we just saw it with Hellraiser where that can look really cool. Just don't make him so, like, pedo-y and you'd be fine.
I think it's inherent in the character.
Well, what's our question for next week?
So the new question of the week is very short and sweet and to the point. What's your favorite foreign film? I can tell you what my not favorite foreign film is, and that's a Serbian film. I don't like that movie.
Well, I can tell you my not favorite is Deerskin. I have a couple others in mind.
That's your least favorite foreign movie that you've ever seen?
I didn't say. I said it's my not favorite.
Well,
so it's
I meant to say. Yeah, okay. All right. I'll take it. All right. So we'll answer that next week. Your favorite foreign film. In the meantime, you can answer those questions on social media when John posts them.
Usually I post the question on Monday because people seem to respond to it. All those answers came today. So, yeah. So you can follow us on social media. We are there at Dewey Pod Monster on pretty much everything where you could follow someone. You can always go to our website, which is crap.town. And of course, you can leave comments and feedback either on the website or on the episode itself, depending on what platform you're in. And again, no one's figured it out yet. We're still waiting for someone to email us and tell us what kind of schmucks we are. So go ahead and email us. And then after you do that, you can also follow Sean and all his beer capering. Sean, where can we do that?
No one's emailing us because we're not schmucks. Maybe that's what it is. But you can find me if you're
Speak for yourself.
Okay. If you're looking for beer content about Michigan beer specifically, you can find me at youtube.drafttherapy.com. You can also find me on social media at Draft Therapy.
That's right. And I think that's all we got. I think we're done. Are we done?
I think we're done.
Let's get the fuck out of here. So we'll be back next week. We will be doing something a little bit different next week. So prepare to see a bunch of new links coming out because, well, you won't hear that by then. So never mind. We'll talk to you soon.
I'll tell you. Hold on.
Oh, okay.
That.
Just all the good stuff that you get live is the burping and the Googling.
Yeah.